You see any of the seems like all right along. No, it is recommended.
What motion? Obama.
Alright, you guys, welcome to the semi-finals of APU 2016. Congratulations for both teams for making this far. It's a highly anticipated debate, as you can see by all the people who are here, with the exception of the TA who's doing all those what and the medalist who's still in the toilet. Sure, I'm dragging for time. Can I just just some standard advice, like please switch off the mobile phones, make sure they don't ring, shut the speakers. Try not to annoy them too much so that we can listen to what they're saying. Wait. Okay, everyone's here. So, on the motion about Obama and the world, oh, there's water, you get more water. Ah!
Who's the 1,000? That's what you get, right? No. Isn't that what? Marathi Haduado. Chichi the Pipi. Chichi the Pipi. Yeah. Okay, Marathi Hadi.
Yeah, not the chance.
There's one time. Sorry? There's one time.
Okay, my name is Alfred. I'm the chair for this round. With me are India, Sharif, Roshan, and Vidya. Alright? Without further ado, let's call on the Prime Minister, take a stand here and speak.
Destabilization, disenfranchisement, radicalization, and terrorism. The exacerbation of these harms are exclusive to an administration that was negligent, irresponsible, but most importantly, complicit. That administration is known as the Obama administration. The role of team government in entering this debate is we're going to provide a metric as to how we're going to adjudicate it. The metric which we adjudicate this debate is whether or not the Obama administration has detracted or contributed to international peace. This means whether during his administration there have been more wars, there have been more despots, or there have been more democratic institutions, all of which can contribute to a global form of unity, at least allow the basic forms of necessity to be given to the peoples in those countries. We recognize, however, that during the Obama administration, there may have been external pressure from Congress, but we still think that in that party or in that country, he is still the most responsible, as he was elected by the people of his country to ensure more peace. The burden we are going to prove is why he's made peace a lot worse to achieve and why he's made the world a lot worse. So the first thing I'm going to prove, or the first argument, is why Obama has severely destabilized relations in the Middle East, which contributed to a destabilization in the rest of the world. The first level, what happened in the Middle East under his administration? We think that there were problems that were initially started by Bush when he went in, but him omitting from fixing those problems made it a lot worse. Here's why. No, thank you. We're going to go through this in terms of all the problems in these different countries. Firstly, in Afghanistan, we think that we did initially fund the Taliban to fight the government, but they eventually went rogue. And this means that they turned terrorists and started clamping down on the basic rights of the people. They started attacking citizens, they started attacking institutions that were made to help more citizens. But when that happened, we think the Afghanistan government were dependent on the bilateral agreement that provided them training and weapons. And this was an agreement that was set up by Bush when they entered initially. They needed these things to fight and suppress the Taliban to make sure they weren't able to expand more into hurting more individuals. But when Obama chose to pull out of Afghanistan because of his promise to the public, we think the Taliban were able to grow more simply because we weren't able or we weren't funded to take them out. They've grown so much that they spread out power to Pakistan, they spread out power to India, where they've increased their operations in murdering civilians such as children and villagers, but also terrorizing them by subjugating them to living in a world where they should not access education, where they should not embrace their basic rights. Here's a comparative. We think that if Obama stayed there and continued giving the bilateral agreement, he could have prevented an exacerbation of harm, and the Taliban couldn't hurt more. But because he stopped it, he's complicit in all the murders of the various individuals that were victims of their oppression and victims of their evil. But before I move on, yes. Okay, so the second country which he really messed up was Iraq. We think that in Iraq, troops were initially sent in as a result of the Bush war as well. But when they were forced to stay in there, we think they at least maintained some form of peace. They gave out dollar bill aids, they were responsible in suppressing some rebel groups, and they were the only proper force of regulation because of Nuri al-Maliki's puppet form of government. But Obama pulled out, which was an extremely premature action, and here's why. When ISIS attacked, Iraq was so underfunded and underarmed that they actually requested the US for help, but they were denied it. We think that the exacerbation of harms happened even more when the Sunnis, Kurds, and Alawites also chose to join ISIS. And here's why they did so. They opted in as a result of a continued oppression onto Iraq by the government itself. When the troops were still in there, they had some form of leverage to change the governance and the policies that Nuri al-Maliki was exerting onto the individuals, but he never exerted that form of pressure. And because of that, the oppression that happened onto them was so sinister that it forced the people to make a choice between joining the Maliki administration that would oppress them or joining ISIS. When they did choose to join ISIS, he was complicit in giving them more power. He was complicit in the destabilization of Iraq because more of its citizens were opting into radicalization and terrorism than actually rebuilding the country. No, thank you. But the third country in which is in Syria. We think that in Syria, the problem that has been made due to his negligence primarily. And here's why, for two reasons. Assad amped up his dictatorial oppression onto the people due to perceived immunity that he had. Assad directly went against the US red line that they imposed, which against chemical weapons, and they still refused to intervene militarily. What this meant was he knew that he was able to continue oppressing its individuals and its citizens without having to face any recourse or backlash from the USA. The point at which they didn't clamp him down initially meant he was able to continue increasing the severity of damage he was able to push on the people. And this set a precedence to other despots in that region that was okay to hurt other individuals because it means the US won't intervene for their own reasons. And this means that you only amped up or gave much more of a legitimacy to other individuals to be much more dictatorial and oppressive. No, thank you. I'll take it before the sixth. But the second reason is that we think Obama intervenes in an extremely soft manner. And here's why we think his excessive usage of drones has been horrible. Because he uses drones which are firstly ineffective. In these drone strikes, he bombed Raqqa continuously, which did not result in ISIS dying off. It resulted in much more collateral damage in schools and hospitals the people inhabited, the people loved. And when they did this, you only further amped up on all the anti-Western sentiment that has created a string of new terrorist organizations, or at least further funded them. For example, Jais al-Asham, al-Sabab, if anything, all of their recruitment has increased a lot because of the fact that they're seen as being under attack by US drones that are forcing these individuals to radicalize in the face of their danger. But before that, yes.
you need to be comparative because of all the terrorist organizations that you believe to be so problematic were birthed from the interventionist as well as the aggressive military foreign policy that the Bush era had. Would you then have them continue that and exacerbate those very same problems that you were talking about?
So given that there are terrorist organizations that already exist, we think he was in a particularly powerful position to end the ability for them to exacerbate their harms if they intervened at that point. The point at which they pulled out, you were able to empower their fight to hurt more individuals, and that's why we think he's directly complicit in more people being hurt. So yes, Bush started it, but because Obama didn't end it, it became much worse, and that's under his responsibility because his administration was most responsible. But the final country which he hurt was Iran. We think in Iran he should never have lifted the sanctions because this was a country that funded Hezbollah and other Shia terrorist groups. This was a country that funded Houthi rebels in Yemen. This was even a country that funded the Syrian government. All that Iran did was only further amp up on the sectarian divide that further plagues the Sunni Shia groups in the Middle East. And because of this, we think that there's been a reason as to why more individuals are opting into different sides in fighting ISIS instead of collectively coming together